So first part provided you with an overview of portfolio management, that how is it done and what is portfolio management, what are the key objectives of portfolio management, and key objective that we learned was risk reduction. Now second reading focuses on risk management, that is to tell you or gives you an introduction about how this risk is managed. Then third reading would relate risk with return and helps you find out that how do you decide about the, by linking risk and return, how do you decide the actual asset allocation or optimal asset allocation. And then last reading would be mostly based on IPS. So this is how this whole course is structured. So first was an overview, whatever we covered in first would now be used in rest of the readings. So second reading is risk management and introduction. So again, this is just an introduction. You wouldn't see much of calculations here. Most of it would be theory. Just to give you an introduction how risk is managed. Then in level 2, that theory, all those concepts that you are learning here would be practically used to calculate risk, measure risk or modify risk. So here it is still just an introduction. So first of all, you should know that what is risk. So in finance, risk means uncertainty. Anything that you cannot predict is risk. So risk does not mean loss. Risk means uncertainty. This uncertainty can be on positive side or negative side. Risk exposure. Risk exposure is extent to which environment or market risk result in actual risk borne by investor. That is the amount of risk that you are exposed to is known as risk exposure. Risk management, how do you manage risk? So you manage risk with three major steps. That is, define the level of risk to be taken. So first of all, you need to define how much risk do you need to take. And why do you need to take risk? You need to take risk to make return. Because return can only be made if you take risk. If you do not take risk, you will only make risk-free return. If you want higher return, you will need to take some risk. But for that, you need to define how much risk can you actually take. Once you have defined it, then you measure the risk, that what risk are you actually taking, and you compare these two. So for example, you have defined that you will take 12% risk. Now you measure it and you found out that you are taking 15% risk. So then you need to adjust it. That is, if you are taking a higher risk than defined, then you will reduce it. If you are taking lower risk than defined, then you will increase it. Because taking lower risk is also loss of opportunity. If you are taking lower risk, then maybe you are making lower return. So if you have appetite for higher risk, you can take higher risk and make higher return. So this is how this risk is managed, or this is the risk management process. And the overall goal will be to maximize the company's or portfolio's value or individual's overall satisfaction or utility. Moving on, doctrine of no surprises. So what is doctrine of no surprises? The doctrine of no surprises says that if an unpredictable event, either positive or negative, happens in an uncertain world, impact of that event on the organization or portfolio would not be a surprise and would have been quantified and considered in advance. So a group of analysts believe, or a group of analysts believe, or there is a belief in the market, or there is a theory known as doctrine of no surprises, which says that any future risk or uncertainty is already built into the prices or has been considered in advance. So if any uncertain event happens, or if any event positive or negative happen, that would have already been priced into risk. Risk management framework. So every risk management framework should address the following key factors: governance, identification and measurement, infrastructure, define policies and processes, monitoring, mitigation and management, communications, strategic analysis or integration. You should know the names and you should know the definitions of these names, that what do they actually mean. So starting with risk governance, what is risk governance? Risk governance is top to down flow and guidance to manage risk. So it is top to down process and guidance that directs risk management activities to align with support the overall enterprise. So for example, the senior most position or the top management, senior management would set guidelines or would set a direction for risk management, and then that those risk management guidance and direction would flow to the bottom or lower management or lower staff. This is known as risk governance. That is, there should be a governance system in place. There should be a proper guidance and direction coming in from top for managing the risk. Then identification and measurement. How do you do this? You do this using quantitative and qualitative assessments. So you find out what is the risk that you are actually taking and how much risk are you actually taking. Risk infrastructure. Risk infrastructure means that you should have people and systems in place who are required to track risk exposures and who are required to perform most of the qualitative risk analysis to allow an assessment of risk profile. So in order to assess the risk profile of a company or in order to track risk exposure, you need certain systems and people. So you should have those people and systems, that infrastructure available to analyze the risk exposures that you have and to perform any analysis for the assessment of the overall organization's risk profile. Define policies and processes. This is already been discussed in risk governance. So this is a kind of extension to risk governance, and very obvious from the name. That is, risk governance would set a broad concept or broad direction. Then after setting broad direction, at each step, people at each step of the organization or at each level of the organization need to know that how would that risk governance impact their day-to-day operation. So for that, they would need certain policies and processes to be followed. Risk monitoring, mitigation, and management. That is, monitor risk, mitigate it, and manage it. By managing, we mean you do not always have to eliminate risk. You have to take certain amount of risk to make return. So you should manage risk. That is, it should be as per the target or as per the defined levels. Communication. Communication of critical risk issues must happen continually and across all levels of organization. Strategic analysis or integration. It helps turn risk management into an offensive weapon to improve performance. Good risk management increases value of overall business or portfolio. So if risk management in a company or in an organization is very strong, then that leads to an increase in value of the overall business. Why? Because losses will be lower, risk adjusted returns will be higher, and so overall value will increase. And also, when any analyst is valuing a company, they value it based on some future expectations and discount those future expectations to present. So when they discount those future expectations to present, they build some premium in the discounted, and that premium reflects the risk associated with the company. So if a company is managing risk very well, then risk associated with it will be lower, and if risk is lower, discount rate might be lower as well, and so value will be higher. This is just an overview of risk management framework in an enterprise that you can go through. So you establish infrastructure, identify risk, measure risk, monitor risk, communicate, and then all of this combined leads to a strategic analysis. Based on the strategic analysis, board would set goals, management would set strategies to achieve those goals, board would set risk tolerance, and management will allocate this risk tolerance to risky activities, that how much risk can be taken in each of these activities. Board would set risk budgets and management would set risk exposure, that how much budget should be utilized in which exposure. And then there will be policies and processes governing all of these, and there will be risk governance flowing down from board and management to lower staff or to other levels of organization. So this is how whole risk is how risk is managed in an enterprise context. Effective risk culture. So effective risk management is integrated in decision making and management process. If effective risk management is integrated in decision making and management process, that culture is known as effective risk culture. That is, if any decision is being taken, risk management is being applied. If any management process is being made, risk management is being applied. If that mindset is there in the organization, that is known as effective risk culture. What are the benefits less frequent surprises, more decision discipline, better response and risk mitigation, better efficiency, fewer errors, better relations and more trust, better image and reputation. And overall, all of these benefits would translate into higher value for the company. So this is why risk management is important, or risk management is performed. Now moving on, discussing all of these items in further detail, that what actually happens in each of these: risk governance, risk identification, and so on. So in risk governance, you analyze the risk tolerance, that how much risk can actually be taken. Then you set risk budgets, that where should that risk be coming from. That is how the risk is taken. So risk tolerance would help you answer that what is the risk tolerance, how much risk are you willing to take, and then risk budgeting will help answer that how the risk is taken, where should you take risk from. So it quantifies and allocates tolerable risk by specific metrics. And how do you measure this risk, or how do you quantify it? For quantifying it, you have different measures such as standard deviation, beta, VAR, and scenario analysis. Calculations for VAR and scenario analysis are a part of level 2 and then level 3. Here you just need to know the names and their basic definitions. So once you are done with risk governance, then comes identification of risk. When you are identifying risk, you need to know what is the nature of the risk. So risk can be of two types: financial and non-financial. Financial risk include market risk, credit risk, and liquidity risk. Market risk is risk associated with market, any changes in market, or overall market going down, or overall market changing directions. It arises from movements in interest rate, stock prices, exchange rate, and commodity price. So risk of changes in any of these is known as market risk, and it is a financial risk. Then credit risk. Credit risk is the risk of default by the counterparty or by the borrower. Liquidity risk is the risk of significant downward valuation adjustment when selling a financial asset. So if let's say that you have an asset, it has a value of $100. You go to market to sell it, but when you go to market to sell it, you do not find a buyer. So it is difficult to find buyer. Why? Because there are less buyers and more sellers. So maybe instead of $100, you end up selling it at 98 or 95, whatever. So you will be making some loss due to, or you will be selling it at a lower price due to less lack of liquidity. That is known as liquidity risk. So these three are financial risk. Non-financial risk can include settlement risk, legal risk, compliance risk, model risk, tail risk, operational, solvency risk. So any risk which is not financial would be non-financial risk. Risk associated with suppliers, regulators, politicians, customers, community, environment, or any other risk. Any problem so far? So first you perform risk governance, then identification of risk, then you go on to measuring and modifying risk. So when we talk about measuring risk, how do you measure risk? So there are different measures available or metrics available to measure risk. So for example, probability can be used. So you can say that for there is a 20% chance of default. So that's how you are measuring the risk. That is 20% chance of default. You can measure it using standard deviation that you already know, we have done multiple times. Credit ratings and credit analysis. So you can look for credit ratings given by third-party agencies. Ex ante risk cost. So for example, you can look at the price of CDS. What is CDS? CDS is credit default swap. So it is a kind, as we discussed in derivatives already, that it is a kind of insurance on asset. So if investors think that asset is turning risky, if risk associated with an asset is increasing, they would go for insurance. When they go for insurance, they will buy CDS. When they buy CDS, demand for CDS will increase. When demand for CDS increases, prices for CDS will increase. So if prices of CDS are increasing, that means that risk is increasing, or that means that investors are expecting something bad to happen in future. So price of risk or other signals can also be a way to measure risk. Asset specific measures such as beta or duration that you already know. Derivative measures such as delta, gamma, vega, rho. Tail measures such as var, conditional var, and expected loss given default. So all these metrics or all these measures can be used to measure risk. Third party publish statistics of operational risk events across numerous companies. This can be another risk measure. So you can find out that what are the operational risk events across numerous companies through publications, and through that you can find out or you can analyze the operational risk. So these risks, most of these would be focused on financial risk, but to measure operational risk, what you can do is you can go for the and look out and research for past events that happened or past operational failures or past risk events that happened with different companies, and based on that you can analyze the operational risk. Subjective evaluation of threats and potential losses to analyze risks such as changes in accounting rules, laws, tax rates, and regulatory requirements. Market risks are relatively measurable due to availability of large quantities of data. On the other hand, credit, operational, and other risks are somewhat rare events and difficult to measure. So market risk is easier to measure. Why? Because you have data available, but operational risk is difficult to measure because data points, you do not have enough or sufficient data points. So measuring and modifying this. So this was measuring part. Once you have measured it, how do you modify it? So there can be four. So what is modification first? So modification is aligning actual risk with acceptable risk. So at the very start, we discussed that first you define risk, then you measure it, and then you adjust it. Adjusting means aligning defined risk with the measured risk. That is, your actual risk that you are taking should be aligned with the acceptable risk. If it is lower, you may need to increase it. If it is higher, then you may need to reduce it. So this is known as modification. What are the methods of modification? Four key methods of modification include prevention and avoidance, acceptance, transfer, and shifting. What is prevention and avoidance? Prevention and avoidance means that you do not take risk. So for example, if you think this investment is risky, you do not invest into that and you do not take risk to avoid risk. So avoiding risk will help reduce risk. But what is the loss? The loss is that if you do not take risk and completely avoid it, then you wouldn't make any return either. So in order for you to make return or extra return, you need to take more risk. So avoiding risk can lead to lower return as well. Or second is that you accept risk and then you find out ways to reduce that risk. How do you reduce it? You can reduce it through self-insurance and diversification. Self-insurance means that you keep, for example, extra cash somewhere with the intent that if a loss happens, I can use this to fund my operations. That is self-insurance. That is, you have kept some asset idle or some cash idle or some funds liquid idle to fund the events of losses or default. Diversification means investing into diverse group of assets in order to lower the or reduce the risk. Or you can transfer risk, that is passing risk to another party. How does it done? It is done through, how do you do it? It is done through insurance. So when you buy insurance, you have transferred risk from yourself to the insurance company or insurer. Risk shifting, that is changing distribution of risk outcomes generally through derivatives. For example, shifting from future to present or from present to future by using options, forward contracts, others. So these are the four major methods or four key methods of risk modification. You should know names and the definition and what happens in each of these. Now the question is that how to choose risk modification method. So first important point to note is that these methods are not mutually exclusive. That is, no single method provides a clear-cut advantage over others. And so you may be using multiple methods at the same time. So a company may be using risk prevention as well as risk acceptance as well as risk transfer and risk shifting. So multiple of these methods can be used at the same time. Organizations should avoid risks that provide few benefits and potential extreme costs. So if you are making an investment, benefit of that investments are few, but costs are very extreme and high. Then generally what you should do is you should select the first method, that is avoid risk or prevent risk. Why? Because benefit is low, costs are very high. Moving on, when risks lie outside the core competencies of organization, however, so if the risk lies outside core competencies, that is, you know that you will not be able to control it or you do not have good knowledge about it, then again it is better to prevent or avoid. But then again, if you avoid it, then your returns will also be sacrificed. So you need to see whether you want to sacrifice returns or not, depending on your risk tolerance. Self-insurance and diversification generally used by companies with large amounts of free cash flows. So as they themselves have a large amount of free cash flow, they do not need to insure it, but rather they can keep their own cash flows at a you can say keep aside some amount of their cash flows to be able to use them in times of losses. Risk transfer, when risk can be effectively pooled and insurance cost is less than expected benefit. So risk transfer would lead to some insurance cost. So that means that you should only use it when insurance costs are lower than the benefit that you are getting by buying this insurance. So maybe you want to reduce risk, but you end up paying even a higher insurance cost than the loss itself. Then it wouldn't be advisable. So you should go for risk transfer when you know that insurance cost is less than expected benefit. So this is it about risk management. It is again only an introduction and no details or calculations as such.